Spider-Man Lotus is here. After 3 years of being in development, this fan film is now finally out there to watch on YouTube in all 2 hours of its glory. Yeah, that's right. It's a 2 hour movie. It's crazy. And like I said, it's been in development for 3 years. The director of this film, Gavin J. Conop, was 16 when he started working on this movie, and now he's 19, which itself is actually just kind of crazy that, the director is only 19 years old, and that's after 3 years of working on it. And also, speaking of that, kind of funny, if you watch the movie, you can tell that it was filmed during 2020, or at least most of it was, because there's a scene that takes place outside a movie theater, and there's a poster for the Black Widow movie, which I thought was kind of funny. But yeah, so Spider-Man Lotus, it is here. I watched it, and I just want to start things off by addressing the quite large elephant in the room. Because obviously this movie has been canceled. Not like won't release canceled, because it's actually out there and it has been released, but canceled by Twitter. That kind of canceled because of plenty of controversy. Basically, about a year, maybe a year and a half ago now, some stuff came out on Twitter about some past comments from the director and the lead actor, Warden Wayne, who plays Peter Parker Spider-Man in this film. Some things that they said in the past came to light. They weren't great things to be saying. And then there's also some stuff that was going on behind the scenes during the production of the movie on set with some other actors as well. So, basically Spider-Man Lotus is not being looked on the greatest right now by the majority of people, mainly Twitter. To be completely honest, I'm not a fan of it either. I 100% do not condone those actions or that behavior or that type of language or anything like that. I think it's very wrong, and I do not think very highly of these people because of that. But I still wanted to watch this movie, and I wanted to watch this movie setting that aside. Not because it doesn't matter, because it does matter, but I want to separate the art from the artist. I wanted to go into this with an open mind, especially because I remember before all that craziness happened with this film, I was excited for Spider-Man Lotus. Back in 2020, when they released that first teaser trailer, I watched it and I was so insanely hyped for this movie. I watched that teaser trailer and I cried because of how beautiful it was. Seriously, that teaser trailer and the first official trailer, both masterpieces, like amazing pieces of art right there, just the trailers themselves. So I was excited for this movie. And so I wanted to go into this with that excitement once again, put all that controversy aside and just watch this movie as a fan of Spider-Man. So that is exactly what I ended up doing here. And I gotta say that, to be completely honest, I know everybody is hating on this movie, and a lot of people aren't even giving it a chance because of the controversy. Like, I know a lot of people, literally all of Twitter, and actually some people that actually wanted me to review this movie, are completely against it and hate it completely. But to be completely honest, and don't hate me for this, but I actually kind of liked Spider-Man Lotus. Yeah, that's right. I didn't hate it. I liked Spider-Man Lotus. Now, I didn't love it either. I still have my issues with it, but I liked the movie for the most part. And we'll talk about all the reasons for that. I'll explain myself, what I liked and what I didn't like. But if you haven't seen it yet, I highly recommend watching it. If you are a fan of Spider-Man, I'm not necessarily saying you will like it, especially, if you know about the behind the scenes stuff. But just give it a chance. And again, go into it with an open mind. And starting off talking about this, one of the first things I want to talk about is just how impressive it is. The fact that this is a fan film. This is a 2 hour fan film that is not produced by Sony or Marvel or affiliated with them at all. This was just funded by fans. This is a movie that was by fans for fans. And literally the whole budget of this movie is just from Indiegogo. Like, anybody who wanted to donate to this film and the production could have. And it was just fans that basically funded this movie. And so they obviously, it's not a huge budget that they had to work with, but for a fan film, it's fairly substantial. And they definitely put it to good work, because there's so many aspects of this that, you watch it and, obviously it is a fan film. and that's very clear. But there's so many things that set it aside from many other fan films that you've seen. First of all, again, there's the runtime, but also just the quality. Like the CGI, the VFX is one of the shining spots of this movie. My God, it is beautiful. They did a little bit of a sneak peek of it with some of the web slinging action in one of the trailers, and there, like, it looked all right, but here it looks even better. Clearly, they did some fine tuning on it, and it just looks beautiful. I mean, obviously there's a few moments in here, like particularly one of the opening scenes with there's like a car chase going on. The car does look very fake. It looks like a cartoon, kind of. It looks like it's out of a video game or something. But for the most part, the CGI and VFX is great. So honestly, props goes out to the VFX team because they're insane for pulling this off. It's actually amazing. Another thing is the music as well. Gavin actually hired people to do the music, and they got a full-on soundtrack. Like they got an orchestra together and had like the full instrumental song for like pretty much every scene, which is kind of a bit of a complaint as well. I do feel like there's a bit too much music. I feel like we could have had a few scenes that could have utilized silence a bit more. But I mean, a lot of this music is great. Really beautiful and really helps add to the emotional impact of this film, because obviously that's the big thing with this movie is the emotion. Another thing I want to talk about real quick is the opening credits, which were, I believe, I don't know if they were hand-drawn, but they were at least designed by an artist, and they're all like in a comic book style, but using the faces of the actors from the movie. That was all beautifully done. The opening credits were great. So I really, really enjoyed all of that. And overall, obviously, if you don't know about this movie yet, I guess I should probably explain that. The basic synopsis for Spider-Man Lotus is it's about the death of Gwen Stacy, which isn't really a spoiler because, I mean, that's what the whole movie is about. Basically, the Green Goblin, as he does in the comics, he kills Gwen Stacy, the love of Peter Parker, Spider-Man's life. And this movie is the aftermath of that. It's about Peter, Harry, and MJ basically going through depression and dealing with the loss of Gwen, which I think was the perfect story to tell for this, because obviously with it being a fan film, it's going to have to be lower budget. It's not going to have to be, and it can't be like a big CGI, like, oh, Spider-Man versus Dr. Octopus or Venom or like anything big like that. It had to be a smaller, more grounded story. And I know some people are kind of complaining about that. Like, I've watched a couple reactions to the film, people complaining like, oh, there's not enough action and all this stuff, which first of all, I mean, it's a fan film. What do you expect? But also just given the story, like, that's not what it's about. It's not about really the Spider-Man side of things. It's more about Peter dealing with this loss. Another one of the biggest complaints I've seen about this film is that Warden Wayne's performance it's a good performance, along with all the performances in this movie. The acting is great, but Warden Wade's performance just doesn't match the character of Peter Parker, which I have a counter argument to, because yes, this feels very different from the Peter Parker that we know and love. But I think that's very intentional, because this is not a Peter Parker we've ever seen before, at least in live action, in a movie before, because this is a movie that is not afraid to show that dark side of Peter. There's a scene where he's full on yelling at MJ, which was maybe a little overboard, but I mean, think about it. If you were in his position, you just lost the love of your life. And especially Peter in this position is blaming himself. He has all this guilt built up for it. And he has basically no one in his life. He abandoned MJ. He abandoned Harry. He abandoned everyone. He is all alone, and he is dealing with this loss. Of course, he's going to have that built up anger inside him. So I think those kind of darker, more angrier moments for Peter, yes, it's out of character from what we're used to seeing Peter, but I like that. I like seeing this new side of Peter Parker in this version with Spider-Man Lotus. So I really enjoyed that. And like I said, the rest of the performances are great as well. I love each and every single one. I wasn't really expecting a whole lot, just considering, like, it's a fan film, so I wasn't gonna be like, oh, it's like this beautiful Oscar-winning performance. I was like, it's probably gonna be not the greatest. But honestly, like everybody was great here. I already talked about Warden Wayne. Sean Thomas Reed was fantastic as Harry Osborn. Harry has an interesting story here because with the death of Gwen Stacy also comes the death of the Green Goblin, aka Norman Osborn. So he just lost his father. So he's also down in the dumps. And again, this film gets dark. You know, he's popping pills and doing all that stuff. And Sean Thomas Reed perfectly captures that version of the character. Mariah Brooklyn was great as Mary Jane Watson, a character that I think is also like probably the most comics accurate version of the character that we've seen done in live action, because she has so much baggage. She has, you know, again, she's also going through depression. She's also dealing with all this loss. And instead of being like Peter or Harry, where they just go and they hide away, she instead turns to partying and smoking and drinking and doing all that stuff. And so I really enjoyed seeing that side of her. Tuyin Powell, I'm not sure if that's how you pronounce it, but she played Gwen Stacy, even though she's not in the film for a whole lot of it. The small part that she was great. I really loved her chemistry with Warden Wayne as Peter Parker. And another interesting aspect of this film, the two biggest comics that it takes inspiration from is Spider-Man Blue, which is kind of the big aftermath of Gwen Stacy's death storyline, and then it also takes inspiration from the kid. Man, I don't remember what the comic was called, but it was like the kid who collected Spider-Man or something like that. And so in this film, you have this kid named Tim Harrison who has been diagnosed as terminally ill. And basically his dying wish is to meet his hero, Spider-Man. And at this point in the story, after Gwen's death, Peter has given up being Spider-Man. He's given up on that life and he thinks he's a failure. He thinks all these deaths are his fault, he's to blame, but you have this kid who looks up to him as his hero. And I think that is the perfect way to kind of bring him out of this depression and kind of help him see his self-worth and see that he isn't Spider-Man because he wanted to. He's Spider-Man because he has to be, because he needs to be that inspiration for people to look up to. He needs to be that person who can save and help people throughout the city. So I really enjoyed that. Child actor Maxwell Fox Andrews was great as Tim Harrison. Really tragic story, but I really love those scenes. You know, obviously a bunch of great Easter eggs. Obviously the Daily Bugle newspapers on the wall, all the Spider-Man action figures and the video game and the cartoon playing in the background. That was really cool. Now, as for our villains, interestingly, there are two Spider-Man villains in this movie. In the original plan for this film, that was not part of it, but once they got more budget, once they got more time, they decided to expand the story. And so we do have both the Green Goblin and Shocker. Now, Green Goblin is in here for obvious reasons because he's tied to the story. He's the one that killed Gwen Stacy. So I think he was utilized nicely in flashbacks. I think the voice and everything was perfect. The costume I really like because it's comics accurate. I mean, the mask is a little meh, just considering because like, you know, the mouth doesn't move the greatest, but I appreciate the comics accuracy with that. So I think Green Goblin had a really cool haunting presence, kind of haunting Peter in these flashbacks. I really, really enjoyed that. And as for Shocker, Shocker is kind of like our opening of the film battle, which I always love when a superhero movie can open with your character just fighting a random villain. I think that's a great way to establish the character as a hero throughout the city, you know, just their day-to-day life, fighting the Shocker. And Shocker, I really enjoyed his costume. It's very comics accurate, but also practical at the same time. And, you know, Shocker, he was a bit goofy for sure because he was like, oh, this is my Shocker suit. And, you know, it was a little funny, a little goofy, but that was really the only the performance, I think that was intentional. I think that's what they were going for. You know, Shocker has always kind of been a bit of a goofy villain in the first place, so I didn't mind that. But Spider-Man Lotus, it was a good movie. I enjoyed it for what it was. Now, like I said, I do have my problems with it. I do think it's a little too long. I do think Like there's a lot of stuff in here that could have been cut out. Like I loved the storyline with Mary Jane, and I love Harry Osborn's storyline as well, but I did find myself getting a little bored by that. I mean, the whole movie, like I said, it's definitely like there's barely any action in it. It's focusing on dialogue heavy scenes, emotion, all that stuff. And I feel like, as much as I love that, kind of piling on Peter's emotional storyline with also MJ's and Harry's, it did feel like a little bit too much at times. So I feel like we could have done without MJ and Harry's storyline. They didn't really necessarily need that. I understand why it's in there to, expand on those characters and those storylines and those emotions and everything. But I think we could have done without it. There is a bit too many flashbacks as well. But for the most part, I mean, Spider-Man Lotus is a good movie. And again, I just think it's a shame that people aren't even giving it a chance because they're just judging it on the director and the lead actor's past actions. Whether they're even those same people today or not, that doesn't really matter. Like, I just think people should really give this movie a chance, especially if you are a Spider-Man fan. Like, if that's a big issue for you, just think about it. Watch it for everybody else who worked on this movie, who put their blood, sweat, and tears into this, that didn't have anything to do with that racism and other bad behavior. Just think about it that way. But, yeah, I mean, I really enjoyed this. Again, I think this is the perfect story to be adapted in a fan film like this. And again, while it's not perfectly adapted, it has its issues and everything. I think, it was worth the wait. It was worth the 3 years that I've been excited for this film. I think to see this storyline brought to life with both Spider-Man Blue and Spider-Man, the kid who collected comics or something like that, whatever it was called, I think was perfect for this. I think it works. It's a very comics accurate, very like throwback to the OG like 60s Spider-Man comics type storylines. And I just really enjoyed it. As a Spider-Man fan, this feels like Spider-Man to me. Now, I hope this doesn't make a bunch of people hate me, the fact that I like this movie. But again, I'm separating the art from the artist, and I'm just hoping that you guys can do that as well. So anyways, let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Did you watch Spider-Man Lotus? What did you think about it? Again, it's a long 2-hour movie, so, buckle in if you're going to watch this. But let me know your thoughts in the comments below. And, if you did not like it, I would love to hear actual justified reasons as to why you don't like it. Everybody is entitled to their own opinions. So I fully appreciate that. If you want to counter opinions in the comments below, we can have a discussion, whatever it may be. Let me know down there. But for now, guys, thanks so much for watching. Please drop a like if you enjoyed this video and hit the subscribe button so I keep you up to date on everything goes on in the Marvel life.